takes me a couple of seconds to get this up. Okay, there's the link. Mute. Copy. It's going to this email. Right, that link should be with you now, Rick.
It's not with me yet, but I'm sure it'll be here soon.
Yeah. And
I think it's just coming through now.
perfect.
There it is. Okay, going to click on the link.
Hi, Stuart, in the comments there. As you know, it takes a couple of minutes for me to get this link out to social media on the various Facebook groups and Twitter and Instagram and everything like that. So bear with us. But yeah, let's talk to Rick while we get the people in. But yeah, we just talked briefly off camera here. But yeah, so how have you been keeping busy? What's been taking your time up there, Rick? Are you with me there, Rick?
I'm here. Yeah, I am, Mike. Yep. Oh, I've been sort of tied up with all sorts of things. I don't know. I seem to have my finger in so many pies around the place that I would have thought this lockdown business would have kept me sort of thinking of things to do, but just the opposite. I've been busy as hell. Mind you, I have been getting out and about a bit now, quite a bit more. Been up to London a few times.
All right. What have you been doing down there?
Hello.
Am I cutting out, or can you still hear me?
Hang on. Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, I can. Am I breaking up or anything like that?
No. I tell you what, I've muted the YouTube now, so I can hear you now.
Right. Okay.
So I'll keep that muted, and as long as people can hear me, that's the most important thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just getting this out to social media. But yeah, what have you been up to in London? What's been happening there?
Well, I've been mainly in the RAF club. I've had a few invitations to lunches and things, and I'm back there in 2 weeks' time. In fact, 2 weeks' time, it's Battle of Britain Day on September the 15th, and so I'm guest speaker in the RAF club on the 15th of September actually, and then I'm guest speaker again in the Victory Services Club on the 17th of September.
Crikey.
The Battle of Britain being very dear to my heart.
Yes, of course. But yeah, do you have to write them speeches as a bit like a bit of writing and then a bit of like ad-lib kind of thing?
Well, what I do is, there's a whole variety. Sometimes I don't tend to write down my speech because I know what I'm going to talk about. Mm-hmm. So I just write down headings, and I prefer to just talk to the headings.
Probably a good call, yeah.
Which I can talk to all night anyway.
But yeah,
I find it better that way. Sort of that way I can sort of more address myself at the audience and maintain eye contact and things like that.
Yes. So, like, what's the biggest crowd you've actually talked to? Because I'm terrified of like public speaking. Oh God, it's not for me.
I suppose like last year. In fact, I was in South Africa in March last year, and I went to my old school, which is a great school in Natal, South Africa. But they've got a big auditorium there which holds 600, wow. And it had more than 600 in it that day. So I suppose that's probably the biggest audience I've ever spoken to. I spoke to the whole school, and that was quite an honor, actually. Not an honor I ever had when I was at school.
So yeah, like when because like obviously this is getting out on social media will get more people in, but when you go to these schools to talk or that school, like do they view you as like wow, fighter pilot, or do they give you interest, or how do they feel about that?
They give me interest. I mean, quite frankly, I mean they've been told, who I was, been given a
Yeah.
brief introduction, but particularly schoolboys, they'll make up their own minds, and they'll listen, and I must admit it went fantastically well.
Hmm.
So I wasn't complaining at all.
Hiya, Jinzang in the comments there. Yeah, just bear with us because we're just 1 minute into. I said 7 o'clock UK time, so we're just one over. Again, bear with me. There's so many social media things now. It's just getting crazy. But you're on Twitter as well, aren't you, Rick? I think.
I am, yes. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, although I've got a few problems with LinkedIn at the moment for some reason.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's it's more business like, isn't it? Than
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
definitely.
I'm on Twitter. In fact, to be quite frank, I'm on Twitter and I, read what people say on Twitter. I should use Twitter a lot more. I don't. I should use. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun tool. It's a good like marketing scheme as well. But yeah, certain groups work for me as well. Facebook works more for me and stuff like that. But yeah, we're almost here, folks. But yeah, get some questions coming in, guys. I'm going to let you know what Rick flew if you don't already know, because I get a lot, I guess, comments and messages saying, "Oh, I missed out last time. I didn't get to chat to Rick." But Rick was a former Hunter pilot, Lightning, Phantom, and Tornado F2 and F3, and he brought the F2 and I guess F3 into service. And yeah, I mean, what a career, Rick. And obviously he's got the new book out, which is over here. I don't know, is it on that side? Yes, over there. Rate of Climb. I think you can. Is that still available on Amazon, Rick?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's still available. Yep. Yep.
And I'll link all this in the description below once the chat's over. But yeah, Rick, there's a few questions coming in there, so I'm going to let you loose. And yeah, I'll keep on posting on social media. But enjoy, guys, and get your questions in.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, the first one I see, during your time in Germany, what was the most difficult NATO fighter type you fought against in DACT in the Lightning? Well, the first thing I'll say about the similar air combat training, any air combat training is a sport of kings. And, they're all interesting aircraft. Any aircraft you fight against, fly against, fight against is an interesting one. I think probably the most the adversary that one had to think about most when I was in Germany, in NATO, was the F-15s based down at Ramstein. That's a very formidable aircraft, still a formidable aircraft in its own way. But we used to have some really good fights. We had good fights with every aircraft, and every aircraft has got its strengths, its weaknesses. And you play on the strengths, or you play on the weaknesses rather, and you play on your own strengths. Air combat is it's a sport of kings, as I say, and it's a minds game as much as anything else, and it's a tactical game. It's fun. I love it. Okay.
I don't know that one.
Oh, I've got Alexa speaking to me now in the background. Okay. And then I see Tony Llewellyn. Has Rick ever been in the US training or social events? Well, the answer to that is yes. I mean, wherever I've been in my career, I've had a very close association with the United States. Squadrons I've been on, we've always linked closely with American squadrons. Of course, there's a lot of US Air Force based in the UK to this day. And when I was flying the various aircraft I flew in the Cold War, there were many more aircraft. And we used to sort of go to each other's bases a lot. But aside from that, I've also gone to America many times, but I lived in America for 2 years when I was the assistant air attaché in the British Embassy in Washington, where I had responsibility for all RAF personnel in America. So I used to travel the length and breadth of America, go visit them. And I did a lot of flying in America as well. I've had quite a number of F-16 trips and flew various other aircraft, fighter aircraft, heavy aircraft, and helicopters as well. It was a very fascinating tour. So, yeah, to this day, some of my good friends are Americans. They are. Okay. Then we got Peter Harris. How many times were you shot down by a Harriet? Is that the Peter Harris that I know? Never, never, never. He might think differently. No, we used to have a lot of fun with the Harrier. We used to mix with the Harriers and the Jaguars and the Tornadoes a lot, and they were always good fights in their own way. But I don't honestly ever recall being shot down by a Harrier. That's the truth. I hate to say. When going into the merge in the Tornado, would there be any way you would be looking to try and take the fight to work to the aircraft strength? Absolutely, you're working to the aircraft strength all the time. Well, your strength and your adversary's weakness. And believe me, every aircraft has its strengths and weaknesses, and the Tornado had its strengths and weaknesses. I can tell you now. For example, one of its weaknesses was definitely sort of it ran out of, it was, the engines were absolutely fantastic at low level, and they were fantastic when you were supersonic at high level, but in between, in the medium levels, they ran out of puff pretty quickly. So that was a weakness as far as the Tornado was concerned. But you play to it, and you learn the capabilities of your aircraft. It's very important you do. If you don't, you die. Right, Martin Strump. Did the RAF miss a big gain by deleting, disconnecting auto sweep and flaps on the F-23? No. And I say this because, I must admit, when I first went to, and I was the very first RAF pilot to fly the F-2, I introduced it into RAF service. And we were looking forward to the auto wing sweep coming in, but it never came in. And it never came in because, quite frankly, there were all sorts of problems with development, and the costs went up and up and up. And if I'm quite honest, we didn't need it. Operating the wing sweeps manually was not a problem. And if you ever had the wings not quite in the right place, you got a little sort of a message through the seat of your pants, and you knew very quickly sort of to move the wings into the next place. So, no, we operated, in my view, very effectively without the auto wing sweep, and it was an expensive luxury. I do think, in fact, the auto wing sweep did come in later on with the Saudis, with their Tornadoes. Thanks for taking the time to share with us, Rick. If you have one final flight from one final runway and one final route, what would you choose and why? Cool, that's a good question. I think, if I had one final flight, I'd actually probably go back to my first aircraft. I'd love to sort of climb in a Lightning again. I'm not really worried about the runway or where it is. I'll do it anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, wherever I've been in my life, they've all been good places. Just the Lightning was a very special aircraft to me because it was my first one. Can you take us through how you would employ in the Lightning a snapshot red top missile launch against a very high flying target? Well, the first thing I'll say is actually I never flew with red top because I flew the Lightnings I flew with the Mark 1, the T4, and the Mark 2s and the 2As. The 2A, in my view, was the best of the lot. It really was a fantastic aircraft, but we were equipped with fast streak heat-seeking missiles, and that's what we had. The Mark 3s and Mark 6s had red top, and basically so they had sort of a sort of head-on capability of some sort. But basically, You could take them out sort of from the front hemisphere, which was always the easiest way of taking aircraft out. Or if necessary, if you screwed up or something like that, you could take them out in the rear hemisphere, which is a lot more tighter. But it's again, it's deciding what tactics you want to use, and then as you go through the sort of intercept, then you have to adapt things to comparing how you're doing it. Like I've said, the ideal sort of situation is to get into the head sector, but if you screwed up, you can find yourself in the rear sector. You just have to readapt. Just having a look at that. Have you ever played DCS or any other combat simulator? Yes, I played combat simulators. I played, in fact, I went on a trial many years ago at BAE Wharton. I remember it. And I was basically it was a trial that was looking at sort of head-up display, not head-up displays, but displays in your bone dome. So it was, using your sort of bone dome, sort of a look and see sort of type capability, using bore sight, and that was very interesting because, and it's there now. But when I was doing the trials, must have been around about 1983, 82, I think it was. So it's a long time ago. So it takes a long time for capabilities to come along. But the answer to that one is yes. Would better engines, better performance over all altitudes have better offset the initial weapon system issues on the F3? No, I don't think so. The initial weapon system, we did have weapon system problems on the F2, I would say. The F2s came in, the F3 started coming in. I flew the first F3 as well, but that didn't start coming in until about 18 months after we had the F2s. But there was not, they were both the same aircraft, basically, just the F3 was more capable. But no, we had radar problems with the F3, and right from the start. And I knew that before, actually, to be quite frank, before the aircraft even came into service. And I argued that sort of we should take the aircraft into service because I know, and I know to this day, and I've always believed it, is the people who are best at sorting out problems, operational problems, are the operators, the operational people in the Air Force. So we took it in, and it was we who sorted it out. We got to know what the problems were, and I remember going to see the Commander-in-Chief of Strike Command and giving a presentation to him and telling him straight between the eyes sort of what the problems were, and he accepted everything I said, I and my team, and we got more money, and we had a trial to check the radar out, which led to modifications. The modifications were put in because they needed to be put in because I commanded not only the operational conversion unit and brought the aircraft in, but also we were the first squadron to be declared on the 31st of December 1986, and we only got the first aircraft at the beginning of we only started training on it at the beginning of 1985. So we had 2 years to go from sort of first flying the aircraft to building up the unit to getting it ready for operation declaration to being operationally declared, and we made it. And it was a hell of a challenge, and it was a hell of an achievement. But would better engines have made a difference? No, not in my view. No. Then the next question, from T Johnson. Hi, would be interested to hear from you whether it is still worth building the Tempest when AI simulators actually start beating humans flying against them. Keyword Tyrannus demonstrator. Well, I mean, I'm out of the Air Force for 20 years now, so I can't actually sort of profess to be sort of right up to date with things. But what I will say is, if I think back to when I joined the Air Force in 1965, 8 years before that, 1957, there was a minister called Duncan Sands who said that the Lightning was going to be the last manned fighter. Well, you look at where we are now, and we've gone from the Lightning to the Phantom to the Tornado to the Eurofighter or Typhoon, and and now we are moving progressively into the unmanned era. But I think personally, there's a place for that. We are definitely moving into the unmanned era, and I think Tempest will be has a real role to play. Of that, I have no doubt whatsoever. The AI simulators, I accept everything, but I think it's probably pretty early days on that. So I think it's watch this space for the future. We're moving fast, but right now, you need a man in the loop still. But Tempest, I support the Tempest. Are there any cardinal rules you followed in BFM if you lost sight of the bandit, especially rules in where to look to reacquire your bandit, and also rules to avoid exposing your six? Well, nobody likes exposing their six, but I suppose yeah. I mean, if combat is a very sort of dynamic game, and 1v1 is a real sport, because that's 1 versus 1. The greatest tactics come in the sort of 2v1 and the 2v2 and the 2v4s and things like that. But if it's 1v1, you've got to sort of if you don't do something, if you lose sight of your adversary, you've got to work out in your own mind where you expect to see him. And if you don't see him, if you just start sort of floating around the sky, looking for him, to sort of wondering where he is, then pretty soon he's going to appear exactly where you don't want him to appear, and that'll be in your 6 o'clock. So you don't hang around. If he doesn't reappear sort of where you expect him to appear, then you've got to basically sort of bug out and come back into the fight. But the whole aim about combat or any warfare, think about back to the Battle of Britain days. If you win the fight, you live to fight another day. If you don't win, you die, and you don't fight another day. So I know what I want to do, and that's fight another day. Boom, 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 boom. Cheers, James. How much did you miss the Air Force when you left? I was brought up in the RAF station at Coldershall, then in Germany. Wonderful. Well, I was, more or less. I mean, I did my Lightning Coldershall. I did my Lightning conversion at Coldershall, and I did my second tour at Coldershall instructing as a weapons instructor on the Lightning OCU. And of course, my very first operational tour was at RAF Gütersloh Flying Lightnings in Germany. How much did I miss the Air Force? Yes, I missed it. I had a wonderful time in the Air Force, absolutely wonderful, wouldn't have changed anything. Yes, I missed it, but I'm still in very close contact with the Air Force. I've been out 20 years now, and in many ways, I'm probably in closer contact now than I was. I know what's going on in the main, not operationally, and not some as I indicated already. I can't keep abreast with some of these sort of developments that are taking place now. But the Air Force, I've only tonight had a Zoom sort of meeting with a whole bunch of ex-Air Force mates. Until recently, I was a vice chairman of the RAF club. There's so many different areas that I've kept in touch with the Air Force. So in many ways, although I know I've left, and I have, from that aspect, I probably have much more freedom now. But I still feel in very close contact, and I really relish that. But overall, the Royal Air Force is a fantastic organisation. It's given me exactly what I wanted in my life, and I just love it. I'm not sure that answers your question, but there you are. You can come back to me. What was the most memorable high-speed, low-level mission you flew in your RAF career? Well, in my days in the Cold War, a lot of our flying, even as an air defender, a lot of our flying was at low level, and both in Germany and back in the UK. We used to sort of fly sort of combat air patrols at low level. For example, in Germany, we flew what they called low-level search patterns, and we had a dial of lightning sort of arrangement whereby any of the other squadrons, the Jaguars, the Harriers, the whatever, the Phantoms, whatever, could call us, and in NATO as well, the 104s, etc., could call us, and we'd provide a cap for them to sort of try and get through, and we'd obviously try and intercept them. So we had some great times, sort of in Germany in particular, at low level. But I had some equally great times when I was based at RAF Lucas in Scotland, flying the Phantom. Scotland's a wonderful sort of flying place to be, and we did a lot of flying at low level over Scotland, and had some great low level fights there too. Separately from that, I spent 3 years instructing on the NAT at the Advanced Flying Training School at RAF Valley. And we used to have some fantastic navigation exercises up into high highs, high level, get airborne from Valley, fly high level up to Scotland, go down to low level, do a low level sort of stretch, and then climb back up to high level to recover back to Valley. We could do that. And some of the flying in Scotland, particularly on the west coast, is absolutely beautiful. And then there's flying we did in Oman when I was down there over the desert, and there's some great flying to be had down in the desert areas. I think it's very difficult for me to sort of pick out sort of one thing that I sort of particularly remember from low level. It was all just totally exhilarating, and it was fun. Yes, it was, but there was a purpose behind it, a real purpose, and we were training for you know what. Right, where are we now? Boom, 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 boom. Then from Zin, what were the most memorable high speed? Oh, that's what I just talked about. Lucas Wright, I want to be an RAF Typhoon pilot. So do I. I won't be able to get the mass I need. Is it still worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. You've got to sort of set yourself a name. You want to be a Typhoon pilot. You know, when I joined the Air Force, before I joined the Air Force, and I grew up in South Africa, and my father was a Battle of Britain pilot, and I saw an advert that said, join the Royal Air Force and the world is your oyster. And on the front page, there was a squadron of Lightnings lined up, and the Lightning pilots were walking back, and I looked at that and I said, that is me. That is what I want to be. And so single-mindedly, I said, I want to be a Lightning pilot. As I applied to join, they said, well, what do you want to be, a pilot? You've got 3 choices. And I put on my thing, I said, pilot, pilot, pilot. They said, well, you can't do that because you've got a second and third choice. You put something else. I said, no, I want to be a pilot. A pilot, pilot, pilot. And if I can't be a pilot, I don't want to be anything else. So you've got to be single-minded. And so I would say to you, don't have doubt in your mind. Just say to yourself, I am going to succeed. Don't let the maths worry you too much. I'm sure that they'll get you back up. Somebody will get you back up to speed to make it. But if you've got the abilities to be a Typhoon pilot, and you need a lot more than maths, believe me. You know, it's you as a rounded person and your abilities to fly, etc., then go for it. Set yourself a target. Go for it. That's all I'll say. And then where are we now? Cheers, James. Now, Zim, can you take us through how you pulled an optimal sustained turn in the F2 and F3? What corner speed, what optimal wing sweep to maximize your turn rate? Well, of course, in the F3 we had obviously the wing sweep capability. In the forward position we had the wings at 25 degrees swept. The next position was 45 degrees swept. The next position was 57, 53 I think it was, and then there was 67. Then that was with the wings right back when you're going fast and you're going like a bullet. You don't turn very well at that. Obviously the best, we had what we call a maneuver flap as well. The maneuver flap was on the leading edge of the wings, and that was a very useful thing to help us turn. Obviously, the best way, the tightest turn you could do in the F3 was in the 25 wing situation. and that was sort of more or less at the lower speed. So 45 wing was good as well. But you don't want to, you don't, at the same time, a bit of a compromise in there, because you don't want to be at the slow speed end where you can't sort of react quick enough, and you don't want to be at the high speed end where you can bug out all right, but you can't do much else. Well, you can actually, you can get your speed down. So we used to, probably the best, as I recall, I'm thinking back in my head now, the best sort of sustainable sort of G was around about 350, 360 knots, and that was an excellent speed at which to turn. And yeah, beyond that, you know, you could play all sorts of things. At 300 knots, probably the best speed to turn. No, I think it was 25 wing. I think it was about 350, 360 knots. And as I've talked about the wing sweep already, did the Tornado F3 struggle at higher altitudes, and what height did it do so? The F3, as I've already said, was superb. It was basically, the aircraft was a derivative of the bomber version, the mud mover, the GR1 in those days, the GR4 as it became. And the engines were very much sort of designed for low level. They weren't designed for the medium levels, and high level I'll come to in just a moment. So the engines were absolutely, the aircraft was absolutely superb at below 5,000 feet. Between above 5,000 feet, as a subsonic aircraft, it started to run out of puff, and it really did, and that was a limitation on the aircraft. When we got up to high level, again, subsonically, it didn't like it. But you'd put in the burners, for example, if you're doing, you climb to maybe 36,000 feet, shall we say, to do a high level intercept. And we use what we call a boom and zoom technique. So wherever we were, we would accelerate at whatever height we were. 36,000 was normally where the tropopause was. And the aircraft in reheat would accelerate pretty quickly. And once it got supersonic, and the more you accelerated, the wings would start coming back. And supersonic, it was like a real thoroughbred. It just leapt away. It was very good supersonically. And then we would, I think the ceiling we had, I can't remember the ceiling, it wasn't as high as the Lightning. You know, if you Lightning, we could get, the ceiling of the Lightning was about 56,000 feet. Actually, in actual fact, the ceiling of the Lightning was way above that. But in the Tornado, I think the ceiling we worked to most of the time was around about 50,000, and it started running out of puff again above that. But like I said, I think I've just said it. Low level, superb. Medium level, engines weren't that powerful. High level, supersonic, great for a while. The other thing I would say is that when we went to the Gulf for the first Gulf War, we modified a number of aircraft, and we put different engines in them. In fact, we got engines from the Germans. I think it was from the Germans, and these engines were slightly different from the ones we had in our aircraft, and they had a better capability at the medium levels and the high level. So that probably not something people don't know, but we did put different engines in the aircraft for the first Gulf War. Where are we? Boom, boom, boom. When you engage reheat in the Lightning, can you smell the burning avter inside the cockpit? No, you could smell the burning. You could smell avter in the cockpit when you had the cockpit open on the ground and you were starting it. That's if the engine started first time. Very often the Lightning engines didn't start, and one of the ground crew sort of would have to be up on the spine of the aircraft with a hammer, bashing the av pin tank, and the engine would invariably start the second time round, and then you could smell the burning avter. But once you're in the cockpit, you couldn't smell avter at all. I did have one fire, in fact, just after I'd fired a missile in the Lightning. I didn't even know I had the fire until I landed, and it was all burnt out back there around the avter tank. Did you ever fly the Mach loop, and is there anything you can tell us about how it is used in training? I'd have loved to have seen a lightning down in the valleys. Well, the answer to that is yes, many, many times. And in particular, right the way since training, I remember going down the Mac Loop when I did my advanced training on the Nat at Bali in 1966 into 67. And then, of course, in 1974, I went back to Bali as an instructor. And we used to low fly over Wales all the time, and the Mac Loop we use it all the time. We use it for fun. If we're on a staff continuation training exercise, we'd use it for training as well, because it's a very useful training exercise for the students to see how you sort of wind your way around the valleys. And the Mac Loop is an absolutely superb place to go flying. And I've been down the Mac Loop in phantoms and tornadoes as well. I can't remember whether I went down there in a lightning. I may well have done. Boom, boom, boom. Then greetings from Finland. Greetings from Finland. I hear you had the red arrows there last weekend. What would be your opinion of both Eel and Tornado versus US fighters of the era? Well, like I said right from earlier on, the first thing I'll say is that every aircraft, just because people think you're a more deficient aircraft than another aircraft, doesn't mean to say you're going to lose the fight. Yes, you will if you get yourself into a very, very close combat, but then you try and avoid that. You try and play on the weaknesses of your opposition, which means you've got to know the weakness of your opposition, and you use your strengths. And both the Lightning and the Tornado had deficiencies and strengths. The Lightning was not as maneuverable as the United States F-15, and didn't have the avionics of the F-15, but it had many other capabilities which were much better than the F-15. So, there was always a good fight. The Tornado, again, the Tornado was was designed as an interceptor. It's not a close combat fighter, although, you could get into a close combat fight. But you use the aircraft and the weapon system and the capabilities you've got. And for example, sort of the Tornado F-3 on red flag exercises out in Nevada, equipped with AMRAAM, ASRAAM, data link, very capable radar. Believe me, the Tornado F-3 was a very capable aircraft in its own right, even though it had deficiencies on engines and things like that. It's how you fight with the aircraft, how you use it to best advantage. I could go on all night about combat, but I better not. I have read that the wing. This is from the Freckle Pony. I have read that the wings on the Tornado GRX were interchangeable with those on the F2, F3. Was this be the same with pilots? I.e., would you take a GR? No, no. I mean, as for the wings being interchangeable, they might have been interchanged. I'm not sure about that because, of course, the wing sweep positions in the GR14 were different from the F3, as I recall, but I might be wrong there. But remember that sort of the GR1, the avionics in the cockpits, they've got different tasks to do, and they've therefore sort of got different requirements, different kit in them, and you can't just interchange one from the other because you're working in a different environment with different kit. So I would say no. That said, flying the aircraft, if you could fly the F2, F3, you could fly the GR4 and the other way around as well. They flew very similar, and from the operating of the engines and things like that, they were very similar. So no problem flying. It's not the flying, it's the operating of the aircraft that takes the getting to know, and the tactics to be used. And like the air defense squadrons use tactics that the GR4 squadrons don't train in, and vice versa. Right. It's like a big family RAF. This is Jez James. Like a big family RAF. My dad was stationed at Wildenrath. Lovely place, I think, in Germany. Yep, been there many times. 19 Squadron and 92 Squadron. 92 Squadron was my first Lightning Squadron. Phantom one I can remember. I remember the officers having summer balls, if that makes sense. Well, all I'll say is yes, we always had lots of fun. We had summer balls. We had lots of fun. They were great days, fantastic days. T. Johnson, during the Cold War days, what was the RAF opinion of the secretive MiG-31 and its powerful Zacion radar? Well, I think we've never underestimated the Soviet aircraft. We obviously sort of were aware always of, well, I say always, as best we were informed of their capabilities, whichever aircraft it was. And yes, they were very capable. And we obviously sort of watched them very carefully. On all aircraft, we would modify our aircraft. We were improving our capability all the time with new modifications, new radars, all sorts of things. So you don't sit still and watch the other side sort of get better and better. You've got to sort of batch them at any time, and know their, and like I said all along, know their strengths, know their capabilities, know how you're going to deal with them. So MiG-31, very capable. Yes, we were aware of it. Did it worry us? Yeah, probably did. Martin Strumpler, how confident were you in your aircraft abilities to win an engagement with the Soviet Union when flying the Lightning in Germany? Well, when I was flying the Lightning in Germany at Gütersloh, we were very close to the border, and we used to have two aircraft at 5 minutes readiness, day and night, 365 days a year, and we used to get scrambled regularly. And we used to, that was for all sorts of reasons, whether it was to react against what was happening on the other side, and probably the nearest MiG-21, that was our biggest adversary squadron, was only probably 50 miles away from us, basically. And they would test our reactions quite a lot. We knew, obviously, the MiG-21 very well, an aircraft that's not dissimilar to the Lightning in many ways. We obviously never came into sort of a fight with it, but we used to see it a lot. We used to react and find ourselves up on the border, often sort of patrolling down our side of the border while the MiG-21s were on the other side of the border. Again, it comes back to we used to study the MiG-21 a lot. We knew what the capability of the aircraft was. We knew how they operated it, and that told us a lot. So because that told us a lot, it enabled us to work out sort of how we were going to fight it when the time came. Obviously, we would use some of our own aircraft in dissimilar air combat to provide opposition that was similar to the MiG-21. So I think they probably did the same on the other side. Again, I haven't flown the MiG-21 in close combat, but I'd certainly like to. Jim Zhang, when you transitioned from the Lightning to the Phantom, what were the biggest differences in flying characteristics of the Phantom that set it apart from the Lightning? Right. The Lightning was just a beautiful aircraft, single seat, with two very powerful engines. It was like a rocket. Actually, and as far as flying the aircraft is concerned, I really can't think of a vice in the Lightning. It was just beautiful to fly. The Phantom, as well as being a two-seater, so you had to get used to the two-seat environment, which was different, did have different flying characteristics. For example, and that's much to do with the design of the Phantom, which had lots of air blow around the system. It had wings that sort of were cranked up all over the place, and again used air blow mechanisms, things like that. And it was the design of the aircraft. The Phantom was a hugely capable war machine, I might add. But probably the biggest one was when we would get into a turning environment in the Phantom. When you were putting G, and we had an angle of attack indicator in the Phantom. So we used to fly what we call units. And when you used to get to 16 units in the Phantom, you did not use the ailerons to turn. You used the rudders to turn. So under G, you use the rudders in the Phantom to turn, which was totally alien to anything I'd been using up until that point. If you didn't use the rudders and you continued to use the ailerons, the aircraft would react because of the design of the aircraft in going the opposite way from which you wanted it to turn. That was because of a phenomenon known as adverse yaw. So that was probably sort of a major characteristic. The other major characteristic, I say, with the Phantom, with the engines we had, when the RAF bought the Phantom, they bought it for the low-level world, and then they got converted, transferred into the air defence world. Again, the engines, they put Rolls-Royce Spey engines in them, which were very much designed for low level. So not dissimilar to the Tornado, quite frankly. The Phantom, whilst it was good at low level, the engines ran out of puff in the medium levels and also into the high level. And that was a very different thing. You noticed that. But capability-wise, the Phantom was, as a war machine, it was far more capable than the Lightning, I have to say. So I think those were the main characteristics. The other, I suppose, the one I mentioned briefly, the angle of attack. We used to fly angle of attack in the Phantom. It was the first aircraft I flew when we had an angle of attack indicator, and so and been very much used for carrier landings and things like that. And so when we landed, when we flew an approach, we didn't fly an airspeed approach. We'd fly a unit. We'd fly on the units, and in fact we had indicators that indicated whether we were in the right zone. If we had a green, or in the wrong zone, we'd have a red, or indicate go up, go down. But we used to fly angle of attack on the approach. So that was another difference as well. The other one was landing the Phantom. The Phantom was designed to land on an aircraft carrier. I have to say that probably the Phantom is, in my view, just about the easiest aircraft to land of the lot, because you didn't land it, you just flew it in. It had a hugely strong undercarriage, obviously for carrier landings, and you could just drive it. You didn't even kick the drift off. You sort of just fly it into the ground, and then it straightened itself out. It was quite a machine, the Phantom. It was a great machine to fly. Where we got to? Boom, 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 boom. Martin Strimpler, why did you not consider joining the South African Air Force? Hello from Cape Town. My brother lives in Cape Town. He actually lives in Fishhook. I go there every year. Right. Well, I joined the RAF. As I say, my father was a South African, in fact, born in Kokstad, South Africa, and a Battle of Britain pilot. And he joined the Royal Air Force just before the Second World War, when he was in Southern Rhodesia, in fact. I applied to join the RAF from South Africa and was accepted. And why did I join the RAF rather than the South African Air Force? For quite a few reasons, in fact. Firstly, because in my view, because my father had been an RAF pilot. Secondly, in my view, the RAF was and still is the best air force in the world. The third reason was I wanted to fly the Lightning. That's the third reason. The fourth reason is if I was going to fly the Lightning, I knew I could come across and I could fly a Lightning. And I was 20. I had my 20th birthday on the Cape Town Castle heading from South Africa to England. And I was flying Lightning when I was age 22. In those days, I knew that I would not get my hands, if I was lucky at all, on a Mirage in the South African Air Force until I was about my late 30s. I couldn't wait that long. But I wanted to fly the Lightning. I think I've given you enough reasons there. This is from, can you share any experience about working with navigators? Were you usually assigned the same nav each sortie? Much adapting needed depending on who you got crewed with? Always interested in navs. I'll say that I spent my first 10 years in the RAF flying single-seat aircraft, flying mainly by myself, and I was also an instructor. Um, the first time I sort of came into contact with flying with navigators was when I went to the Phantom, and that was in 1977, which was actually 12 years after I joined the Air Force. So it does take a bit of getting used to. But what I will say is that the navigators that I got to know, some of them are my best friends now, superb bunch, and we work together exceedingly well. Two crew aircraft like the Phantom and the Tornado, the two crew working together is a very, very effective working war machine. If they're not working together, that is obviously the opposite. But I never had a problem. You do get crewed up with a navigator, and it's very important that whoever you're crewed with is somebody that that you're going to get on with. That's very, very important. And so actually putting the crews together is important. You probably sort of try. It never works that you can fly together all the time, but you've certainly, if you were available to fly together, then you would fly together. But many times there was, for a variety of reasons, you were not available, and you'd fly with other navigators. And so that's important as well. So you get to know sort of the capability across the field. But I've got a great respect for navigators. I could never have been one myself. I could not imagine myself sitting in the back seat of an aircraft and allowing somebody else to have responsibility for me flying, looking after my life. So no, I wanted to be a pilot, but I'd have great respect for navigators, and they're a superb bunch who've given me a lot of pleasure in my flying career. Boom, boom, where are we? From Mike Child, hi Rick, did you fly any intercepts with Vulcans at high altitude in the Lightning? Yes. Could they really outturn and evade the fighters? Yes. Yes, they could. The Vulcans were very good. With that great huge wing, and at high level they could really turn you. So we would never take on the Vulcans one versus one. The best way of taking on a Vulcan was 2v1, where we'd have, say, two Lightnings up there, and they would be fighting a coordinated fight. So as the Vulcan turned, and he might be head on to one Lightning, but while he was doing that, the other Lightning was positioning itself in the Vulcan 6 o'clock. So that's how it was very difficult to get a kill. You wouldn't get a kill. I don't think. The Vulcan was just superb, turning at high level. 1v1 difficult. The way to take it on was 2v1 if you could. Right. Then from Zinzang, have you had an opportunity to visit the RAF Museum at Hennet? Yes. What aircraft do you make a point of seeing when you visit the museum? Them all, but I always go and see the Lightning. Wherever I am, I'll always go and sort of see, and if I can, touch a Lightning. The Hunter, the Tornado, any aircraft that I've flown, I'll go and see. I'll always go and see the old aircraft, the World War I aircraft, and in particular the World War II aircraft, the Spitfires, the Hurricanes, really anything. But the RAF Museum is a superb place, and I know it well, and I know all the people there, so I have a very close relationship with them. Boom, boom, boom. From Alexei Mikilia. Yes, we indeed had red arrows in Finland last week. I was watching them, a wonderful show, and I love the way the ground crew handles the Hawks. As an aircraft mechanic myself. Absolutely right. That's really nice to hear. I saw on Twitter, I know Martin Pert, the leader of the Red Arrows. I know most of the Red Arrows very well, in fact, but I watch them very carefully, through Twitter and things like that as to what they're up to. But I'm deeply involved with air displays, amongst other things. And so I see the Red Arrows and the Battle Britain Memorial Flight, and I'll see them again in a couple of weeks' time at Duxford in Cambridge, where one of the few air displays is taking place this year. Okay. From Brockwell Lane, I believe the RAF Phantoms had different engines. Yes. How did these compare? Did you ever dogfight the American Air Force? Yes, yes, and yes. I mean, I've already said earlier on. I mean, the engines we put Rolls-Royce Spey into the Phantoms, mainly because they were being used at low level. So the Speys were superb at low level. Of course, later on we did get we had 74 Squadron. We got the F4J, an additional Phantom Squadron, where we didn't put the engines in, and they had the American engines in. And those engines were much better for the medium level and high level operations. And again, if we did dogfight them, and the first thing I'll say about American engines is that you can normally see them coming from a long way because they used to smoke. So that used to help quite a lot in sort of entering any fight, because one of the biggest, you got your radar, if you can see them on radar, but getting a visual contact is really important. If you can see smoking engines, that helps a lot. But again, in any fight, you play to your adversary's weaknesses and you play to your strengths. Mogsy Man, if you had to pick one thing, what do you miss about flying fast jets? I did continue to fly, incidentally, when I left the Air Force, I continued to fly with the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve. I had a commission in the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve, and I used to fly with an air experience flight, giving air experience to air cadets, flying an aircraft called the Grob Tutor. And I really enjoyed that. But as I got to, and I'd just been extended from age 65 to 66, when the Royal Air Force changed its policy about age limits for flying their aircraft, and basically sort of said that anybody over the age of 65 could no longer fly one of Her Majesty's aircraft, and my flying and about 40 other people came to an abrupt halt. That was a great, we weren't flying the fast jets. We would have loved to have flown the fast jets, but looking back on it, I've had 45 years of flying. I've enjoyed every moment of it, and I've had some wonderful experiences. So when it comes to the time you can't do it anymore, and the last time I flew a Tornado was when I was 53 by myself. So I can't complain at all. And even when I was flying with the air experience flight at Royal Air Force Benson, most of the other guys flying with me were all ex-fighter pilots, doing various things. Some were captains with BA or Virgin or what have you. But in the crew room, we all had, no responsibility. We just flew, and the war stories were fantastic to listen to. Not sure that gives that an answer, but there we are. From Frecklepoony, how much further development do you think the Lightning could have taken? I'm sure you've seen the mock-up of Lightnings with solid noses. Well, they did look at the Lightning landing on a carrier even, but that would have required sort of quite a lot of money and a hardening of we had hooks on the later Lightnings, but it would have required a hardening of the undercarriage, the fuselage underneath, to take the deck landings. We did look at Lightnings in various roles, but I'm not sure that the Lightning would sort of had a huge capability for other things. One of the problems with the Lightning was when we didn't have many weapons on it. For example, when I flew the Lightning, we had 2 missiles, we had 2 guns, or we could carry 4 guns in the aircraft, in the ones that I flew. And the radar had a very limited capability. We could only see targets out to about 25 miles maximum and low level, out to about 10 miles maximum. And so, which compared with a Phantom and a Tornado, where we were seeing targets out to 160 miles or more. And we had loads of other kit, and the Tornado and the Phantom could each carry 8 missiles and a gun. So I'm not sure that the Lightning sort of had that much more in it, but it was developed for Kuwait. It was developed more for Saudi Arabia. So there certainly was there was capability to sort of do ground attack in it, and ground attack was done in it. And the Lightning, great aircraft, but of course one of the big problems with the Lightning, wherever you are, even with the big ones, fuel was always a problem. It uses fuel pretty quickly. So having the availability of air-to-air refueling helps a lot as well.
So, Rick,
Yeah, that's all.
as we were wrapping up here, sorry to interrupt. If you want to pick one last question and then I'll jump in afterwards, that'll be great.
There's one here I looked at from Martin Strumfer. Would you have considered getting into the BBMF to end off your brilliant flying career? Well, the answer to that one is yes. My father was a Hurricane pilot in the war. And when I flew the Tornado, introduced the Tornado into RAF service, based at RAF Coningsby, where the Battlebrook Memorial Flight is based, in fact, I did my conversion to the Tornado with British Aerospace at their airfield at Warton. Great place to go and fly. And I brought the third aircraft to be delivered to the RAF. I flew back with my navigator, Nobby Clark, back to Coningsby at the end of March 85, this was. And I remember my sort of Air Officer Commanding, my Air Vice Marshal boss, he called me in April. Literally, I'd only had literally less than 2 months flying the aircraft. And he said, Rick, it's the 50th anniversary, I think it was something like that, 50th anniversary of the first flight of the Spitfire or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And he said, would it be great if we sort of had a synchronized display on the display circuit this year, the old with the new, a Spitfire and the Tornado? And I said, fantastic, I'm all for it. And I was, because the Tornado was a lovely aircraft to fly, very easy to fly. And at this stage, there were only 2 pilots to fly who were qualified on the aircraft, myself and another chap who'd been with me at Warton. And I said yes, and we worked out with BBMF the sequence. Paul Day was going to fly the Spitfire, and we could do it, no problem at all. The squadron commander, I wouldn't normally have done this, but the other pilot sort of cycling back from the bar on a Friday night after happy hour, fell off his bike and was concussed, and he was off flying for a few months. And then there was only one pilot for a while, and that was me. So that's how I came to do the synchronized display, me flying a Tornado with the BBMF Spitfire in the year was 1985. At the end of that year, BBMF actually came to me and said, we'd like you to come and fly for us. And I said, I'd love to come and fly. And my then station commander said, you haven't got time, Rick. You're trying to build up a new squadron, and you're just far too busy. And actually, with hindsight, he was absolutely right. So that's how close I got to flying with BBMF. So in answer to your question, yes, I would have loved to fly with BBMF. I'm still very closely associated with BBMF, but I didn't fly with them. There we are. That's that. Okay, Mike.
Perfect. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us again. Hopefully you've had a great hour with Rick and he answered your questions. But just give a quick plug for Rick. His book, Rate of Climb. I hope you guys can see that. Here we go. That is still available on Amazon, isn't it, Rick?
Yes, it is. Yep.
So yeah, get yourself over to Amazon. I will link that down in the description. But thank you very much for coming in.
I would say one thing, Mike. If anybody wants, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Anybody wants a signed copy, they can have my email, and I'm quite happy to send them a signed copy if you can give them my email.
Yes, I'll link that in because I was lucky enough to get a signed copy from Rick, which is amazing. So yes, I'll link the email down with the description below if you just want to buy it from Amazon, but also the email to Rick if you want a signed copy. But Rick, what an absolute pleasure to have you on, and yeah, I could have you all day because your career is so amazing. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Cheers, guys, and we'll see you again.